All right, we are live. Welcome, welcome, everybody. Unfortunately, I have to log in to TikTok really quick on my computer because something's acting up. Oh, the use QR code. There we go. Should work. Okay. Should be all set. Howdy, howdy, everybody. In layman's terms, can you explain atomic spin? So yeah, atomic spin has basically two contributions. There's the contribution from just like literally the electron going around the atom and from the nucleus spinning around. And then there's the sorry. And then there's the contribution from quantum mechanics. The electron itself has its own intrinsic angular momentum, and you know, the protons have their own intrinsic angular momentum, although they can actually be thought of as genuinely spinning. But yeah, those are the two contributions. Basically, the electron's orbital angular momentum, it's spinning around the atom, and then the electron itself is spinning. It has atomic spin, or it has intrinsic spin, I should say. Dr. Blitz, can you calculate the Schwarzschild radius of a single electron and compare that to the Planck length? Sure. There's some good calculators, by the way, that you can just find on the internet. We want this one. Electron. It is 10 to the minus 57 meters, so it's much smaller than Planck length. What does it take to become a physicist? Well, generally it just means that you're working in physics. Like that's just generally what it means, right? Working in physics, working in mathematics, whatever it might be. Now, oh, am I not picking up on, oh, there we go. Now, typically what that means is that you have a PhD or you're a grad student in the field. That's just typically what it means. Is YouTube, am I just not getting any YouTube comments? It's possible that I'm not getting any YouTube comments because they're just not coming in. Okay, yeah, that's probably the case. Okay, yeah, no, they're there. Okay. Okay, I just need to ban this guy. Explain the double slit experiment. Why did it happen that way? So the double slit experiment is just a demonstration that particles are actually waves. That's really all it is. If you sent like water waves through a pair of holes, like if you put like a big barrier in a wave pool and then put two holes or two slits in the barrier, you'd get the same sort of effect that you see from the double slit experiment. The thing that makes the double slit experiment interesting is that those waves can then become entangled with other things. And so if you try to measure things, that forces an entanglement between, if you try to measure which slit it goes through, that forces an entanglement between the slit and the thing that you're measuring with. And when that happens, it means that those two waves that are passing through those slits are no longer the same kind of wave anymore. They are, I mean, they're the same kind of wave, but they're now orthogonal to each other, so they can't interfere anymore. So you just get two bright spots instead. How does time work in quantum probability? Does low probability equals longer time for that outcome? Yeah, generally. Is holography kind of taking the place of string theory as the exciting frontier for physics? Holography comes from string theory, so not quite. But I mean, you can think of it that way. Holography seems more easily acceptable than string theory is, because it kind of is broader. Mathematically speaking, can a black hole ever recover? What does it take if we model its function? So black holes can't. Black holes will always stay black holes. But what can happen is they can evaporate. Why did they act differently when the experimenters weren't watching? No, the point is that they act differently when you measure them, which is what it means for the experimenters to be watching. They act differently in that case. When they act differently, that's because of the entanglement. Do atoms obey the second law? Will they all disintegrate and contribute to disorder? So the second law doesn't say that things will disintegrate. But yeah, I mean, the second law is a law, right? Is it possible that a black hole is just a bending of magnetic field that we can see? No, it's gravity and electromagnetism are different things. We have $5 from Aaron Bailey. Thank you so much, Aaron. How is string theory called scientific theory when it's technically not testable? So the way that science communicators use the word theory is different from the way that scientists use the word theory. This is an unfortunate consequence, but when a physicist uses the word theory, or a mathematician uses the word theory, they're typically referring to a mathematical framework. And if they're a physicist, that mathematical framework has some sort of interpretation behind it. It doesn't say anything about whether or not it's been empirically tested or anything like that. And to be clear, string theory is testable. It just hasn't been tested. And from Flosscal with the $5, how long is your hair? Happy 2026. However long that is. Thank you for the $5, Flosscal. Start a podcast like Star Talk or Veritasium. Look, my plate is already super full. Can physics explain consciousness? That's probably not within the realm of physics. What is the physical meaning of the wave function collapse in quantum mechanics? Well, it just means that the wave function abruptly changes when a measurement is made. And when that happens, you only get one outcome when you measure it. String theory, M theory, etc., they're all frauds. That's a very anti-science view. I didn't know that we had science deniers in here. Is the universe open or closed system? It's not even clear if those are correct labels to apply to the universe as a whole, because those are typically labels that we apply to subsystems that are situated within an external system. What are some good tips for research? Read a lot. Does everything lead back to F equals ma? No. Why are there stars older than the universe? There aren't. Can I ask what do you do in a day as a physicist? So, it really depends on the day, and it depends on what projects I have active. So sometimes, like yesterday, I spent all day redoing a calculation that I wasn't sure if I got right or not, because it's kind of a necessary calculation for a paper that myself and a few colleagues are publishing or are going to be submitting in a few days. So I was rerunning some calculations to make sure that everything was above board. And that took like 4 or 5 hours. Other days I'll spend some time reading just to get inspiration for new ideas. Other days still I will spend time writing those ideas down, working out the details of those ideas. Sometimes I'll be in meetings with collaborators. So it really depends on the day. Does the deterministic universe argue for the existence of God? No. Is music a function of math, or is music a standalone? You don't need math to do music, but like you can talk about like the mathematics of music. It's kind of like the same way that you don't need physics, you don't need math to do like baseball, but like you can analyze baseball mathematically. Is there any possibility where humans can create a black hole destructive enough to kill us and the planet? Not right now, no. Are you an atheist? Yes. Does it worry you that we have so many anti-science young people? It does. It really does worry me. This is like a real problem. God theory, like string theory, can be tested but hasn't been tested yet. What makes something a theory, when physicists and mathematicians talk about theory, talk about what a theory is, what they're referring to is something that has a mathematical framework. Some sort of mathematical framework, maybe some set of initial conditions or some set of initial data or some something rigorous, something concrete mathematically that you can grab onto and analyze. If you can do that for God, by all means, go ahead. Darth Dawkins is whining about you right now. That checks out. In your profession, do you come across more non-religious people than religious? I don't usually talk about it, but most of the people that I've talked to kind of like don't come across as religious, or at least they keep it to themselves. Why do you think physics leads so many people to God? I don't think it does. In fact, if you look at a survey of like the top physicists in the world, or the top physicists in the United States, I should say, what you'll find is that they are less likely to believe in God than your average physicist. Make of that what you will. Can you describe your opinion about that experiment deep in the cave with the pure water / neutrinos? My opinion about it? I don't... Like, it's cool? What's the pay range for your career and how hard is it to land a job? So currently, okay, so it depends on what you mean. So I'm currently applying for new jobs, or rather the application process is over and now I'm waiting to hear back. For somebody at my stage in my career, so has a PhD, has done a postdoc, is applying for another postdoc, you could probably expect between like 50 and 80K, depending on where you're living, at least in the United States for a postdoc. This is a temporary 2 or 3 year position. On the other hand, if you get a professorship, again, depending on where you are, you can expect between 80 and 120K starting. And it's very hard to land a job. And who knows, like the academic structure might change significantly in the next 5 years. So there's some worry there. How long did it take you to get your PhD from associates to PhD? I never got an associate's. I got a bachelor's right at the door. So it was 11 years from beginning my bachelor's to finishing my PhD. Unemployed college grad? Well, I mean, I wouldn't say I'm unemployed. I'm making plenty of money right now. Doing social media science communication, like I'm making plenty of money that way. But I finished a university position in May. I'm applying for another university position now. Or I was, and now I'm just waiting to hear back because they don't usually review these things, or they don't usually start sending out letters until January or February. So do you do it for money or for the love of the game? Oh, you do it for the love of the game, right? How long does it take to go from postdoc to tenure professor? It depends. It depends on how many postdocs you want to do. Typically, most people in my area do 1 or 2 postdocs before they even get a tenure track position, if they get a tenure track position. And then getting tenure is usually a 6-year process from there. What are the main merits in physics to a PhD over a master's? Well, when you're doing a master's, you don't really do research. And if you want to be in academia, if you want to do research, then you should get a PhD. From the Mad Cow with the $5, do you think QFT is the same or the beginning of Einstein's unified field theory? Oh, well, it's definitely not the same. But whatever the final result is, the final theory of physics, if there is such a thing, it has to reduce to QFT in the low energy limit. It's hard for me to comprehend that the average physicist pay is 50 to 80K, but spends 11 years in college. So look, what it boils down to is when you're a grad student, at least when I was a grad student, like 30K was the stipend that you would expect to get while you were a grad student. So this is after you have your master's. In the 3 to 5 years between getting your master's and getting your PhD, you're making 30K or so as a grad student. A postdoc position is a temporary position, and you can think of it like, you know how in the trades, how there's like apprentice, journeyman, and then like master or whatever? You can think of a postdoc as like taking off the training wheels and seeing if you can do research on your own. But you're still not like the master, if you will. So it's something like that. So yeah, you're going to get paid less because you're still a baby in some sense. But also, like, yeah, we should pay scientists more, I agree. From Colin Sellers, 154 viewers. I don't know if you know this, but I don't do only this type of stream, but that's fine. So there's 150, so there's 200 viewers on, so right now I have 600 viewers across platforms. And then I also post videos. I mean, look, Colin, if you want to look at my finances, like, you're more than welcome to. I make plenty of money. I can assure you that. That's why I'm not begging for a job right now. Are you going to specialize in astrophysics? Well, I already have my PhD. I'm already specialized. I do differential geometry and general relativity, basically. Will you too contribute in physics field? I already have 5 publications in physics. Is voltage just a made-up mathematical expression derived from electromagnetic fields which do exist? This is an interesting question. The question is like, do fields exist? Do field potentials exist? This is arguably more philosophy. What is probably worth mentioning is that the electromagnetic potentials do have physical effects in the form of the Aharonov-Bohm effect. Even if the electric field is zero, if the electric potential is non-zero, it can have an effect on a physical system. From Anthony Machado with the $5. Thank you so much. Are you familiar with the anisotropic synchrony model that young Earth creationists use to solve their distant starlight problem? If so, could you explain it? Yeah, I haven't read too much into it, but roughly what they say is that, look, technically, in like Einstein's GR or in Einstein's special relativity even, the speed of light convention, that it's the same speed in all directions, technically that's an assumption that we can't measure. Rather, we just assume it because it makes synchronizing our clocks easy and convenient. However, if you assume that light travels to us instantly, but it takes twice as long to go far away, well, then maybe you can solve the young Earth creationist problem because then the light will get to us instantly. That's what they say. It assumes anisotropy though, like which you know is a bad assumption unless you have a really good reason to justify it. How is the geometry of relativity actually preserve the same distance of space for XYZ? Can't total XYZ tensor be neither without them having the same radial length? You'd have to be more specific. The language that you're using is not the language that I'm familiar with. Can't total XYZ what's an XYZ tensor, and what does it mean for a tensor to be neither without them? Yeah, that's a little bit. It's not clear. As you specialized in physics, did your skills, knowledge, and undergrad math grow stronger or atrophy? Well, the physics that I do is very mathematically based, but like if you asked me to do like a complicated analysis proof right now, I probably couldn't. Or if you asked me to do like some number theory thing, I probably couldn't because I haven't used those tools in a long time. If physics is interesting to me, should I pick it or is it too hard to get a job in it? Everything's hard to get a job in these days. You're going to do better in school if you're studying something that you care about. And I figure that that's probably worth it. What do you think of string theory? I think it's probably a correct theory of quantum gravity in some universe, just not ours. Do you tend to ignore questions that venture into philosophy? Depends. Depends on I have a lot of questions to answer. How would one test or attempt to test the various interpretations of quantum mechanics? As a non-physicist, it seems like there's a lot of weird interpretations presented, but it doesn't go further. Yeah, so the trouble is that some of these interpretations are literally identical as far as observations are concerned. However, there is some wiggle room. For example, there are interpretations of quantum mechanics called dynamical collapse interpretations. These are where collapse is like a physical process rather than like some observational Bayesian thing. And so those things can be tested. There are also ways that you could kind of test like gravitational collapse models. Basically anything that involves a dynamical collapse you can test. It's really hard to test the other ones that don't involve that though. I'm a physics major, I love cosmology, but do you think it's worth it to get a cosmology degree? It's not going to hurt you. I mean, it'll just take up more time, but like, okay, so you have X as a null geodesic in Minkowski XYZ T spacetime. Why is XYZ same length? If total geometry of the tensor is conserved, then can't Y amber a different length than X is? X is not a null geodesic in Minkowski space if you're taking X to be a spatial coordinate. The d by dx vector is space-like, not null. How often do physicists get approached by finance companies? I never have, but I don't know. I only have my personal experience. Any personal thoughts on the Fermi paradox? Yeah, the universe is big and spaces or planets are far away. What's wrong, kitty? Evelyn's very sad. I'm currently taking a course on GR, but it's driving me crazy. Any advice or resources? If you're not using Sean Carroll's book Space-Time and Geometry, use it. It's a great book. It's what I learned GR out of. It's really, really excellent. What's D2O? D2O is deuterium. It's dideuterium monoxide. It's heavy water. So replace the hydrogen atoms in the H2O molecule with deuterium atoms. Now, deuterium is chemically identical to hydrogen, but it is physically different. It has an extra neutron in the nucleus rather. Anyway, so it makes the molecule heavier, which makes its chemistry slightly different. Chemical reactions slow down a bit. Here, let me go get the kitty cat so she stops crying. Here we go. Here we have the kitty cat. Want to give a meow for the chat? Evelyn, give me a meow. Okay, she really doesn't want to be up here. She's very upset. Okay, so we have 5 Canuck bucks from CM DPEG. Christians use the BGV theorem in the second law of thermodynamics to say the universe can't be eternal. How do you correct this misunderstanding? Well, the first thing I do is I offer proof that the BGV theorem is not a theorem. It's false. As written, it's false. It's supposedly a mathematical fact that if you have a universe that has an average expansion rate that's greater than 0, then the expansion terminates in then the expansion has a beginning, or the geodesics are incomplete, meaning that there's a singularity. However, last year, a few physicists, one of whom I know, wrote a paper that showed counterexamples, which means that it's not inevitable that if you have an average positive expansion rate, that it follows that it terminates in a singularity. It's just false. The second thing is there are models that get around the second law of thermodynamics and still have an eternal universe. For example, you can have, these are called Janus models. These are models that kind of have a singularity in the middle, or like a small quantum state in the middle, and then you have increasing entropy out in both directions. So if you wind the clock back, the entropy decreases, and then it increases again as you go past that smallest state. There's also various cyclic models that get away with entropy reduction with one mechanism or another. So yeah, neither of them are particularly well founded as far as showing that the universe had a beginning. What is your opinion on human survivability past the Van Allen radiation belts? Well, it's happened. Humans can survive it. As long as you don't spend a whole lot of time in there, because radiation damage is really a time thing. As long as you don't spend a whole lot of time in the radiation belts, you'll be fine. Spend like an hour, you'll get, that's like a few chest x-rays worth. What do you think about the flat earth theory? It's like objectively false. The BGV theorem just shows geodesic incompleteness. Well, geodesic incompleteness is how we define a singularity when we're talking about mathematics. Like when we're talking about, when we define a geodesic, or when we define a Sider-Riemannian manifold, Lorentzian manifold, if you have a place where geodesics are incomplete, that's a singularity. But the BGV theorem actually doesn't show this at all. There are counterexamples, which means it's not a theorem. But physicists rarely genuinely prove theorems. There's usually underlying assumptions that they haven't, that are either unstated or unjustified. If spatial dimensions emerged sequentially via phase transitions, what observable cosmological signatures would you expect to survive in the CMB or large-scale structure? I don't know. I haven't examined such a theory. Why to study advanced topics early as scientists if we still get them to study in higher studies? What the hell is advantage? I don't know what that question means. What do you think about 4th gen nuclear reactors? I don't know anything about them. Is there any proof for a smallest thing being able to exist without being made up of smaller things? Well, look, either there is or there isn't. We don't have any evidence one way or the other, though. Can you explain string theory? Yeah, string theory is like a model. It's a proposed model for how our universe works, where instead of having particles, you have strings, and they're not made of anything. They're just like fundamental. Some of them are closed, like a closed loop of string. That would be like a graviton. And then some of them are open, like just an open loop of string that just wiggles. And under that view, you can unify gravity and quantum mechanics in a fairly straightforward way. The unfortunate consequence is that in order for such a theory to represent our universe, you need to have something called supersymmetry, which if it were real, if supersymmetry actually existed, we kind of expected that we would have found it by now, but we haven't in particle accelerators like this. If supersymmetry is true, there should be certain particles that we should detect, and we haven't detected them, so maybe it's not true. Second, it proposes that there are 10 dimensions, so there's 9 spatial dimensions and 1 temporal dimension. We don't have evidence of those either, but we kind of don't expect to have evidence of those yet anyway, even if they did exist. But that's the rough idea of string theory, that rather than particles, you have little bits of string, and they're not like literal string, it's just like a one-dimensional thing rather than a zero-dimensional thing. From Robert Summers with the $5, are dark matter and dark energy a problem for the Big Bang model and its predictive power? What makes them not ad hoc? Well, look, so dark matter was not added into the Big Bang model in order for the Big Bang model to make sense. Dark matter was hypothesized independently as a result of galaxy rotation curves and as a result of, gravitational lensing and things like this. And then it turns out that if you include the amount of dark matter necessary to fit those things, it matches our observations if you include dark matter in your cosmological data, like for the cosmic microwave background radiation. So that's not ad hoc, definitely not ad hoc. There were other observations that led us to conclude that this is probably a thing. And when we included that into our Big Bang model, lambda CDM, the model makes better predictions than if we don't include it. So that just means that, well, this should just be part of our model, right? Because there's other reasons to think that it's there. Dark energy is a little bit more ad hoc, but it's only a single variable. And so basically there's something called a cosmological constant that Einstein could have added into the field equations that govern the Big Bang model and all of these things. Initially, everybody kind of assumed it was 0, but there was no reason it had to be 0. And so all they did is they said, okay, well, what if we let this number not be 0 and let it just be something else? Well, then you get the dark energy that the Big Bang model currently uses. It's called lambda, the cosmological constant. So neither are particularly ad hoc. Dark matter is justified for other reasons, and the cosmological constant, which gives us dark energy, should have been part of it to begin with, because there's no reason we should have assumed it was 0, right? Now that said, we now have increasing evidence that the cosmological constant isn't cosmological constant, that dark energy is not constant, so we probably need to go back and revise. Isn't dark matter like the God particle thing? No, unrelated. So nothing made all of this around us? Well, if by nothing you mean like there wasn't something that made it, then sure. If by nothing you mean there was nothingness and then all of a sudden there was somethingness, no, that's not the claim. Are there areas of space which are lacking even in dark matter that we are aware of? Well, look, cosmic voids are generally less dense than everywhere else. Dark matter tends to hang out around galaxies and galaxy clusters. So if there aren't galaxies and galaxy clusters, then there's probably not dark matter. How do you know so much in so many fields of physics? My understanding is that a PhD is writing a paper on a topic, but you have so much knowledge in so many fields. I read a lot. Like I read a lot more. I read a lot of stuff outside of my specific area, which is maybe is detrimental to my expertise, to my knowledge in my specific area, but Lorentz and Einstein proposed the same theory, but from opposing views. Is this truly correct? You mean Lorentz, not Lorenz. One has a T, the other doesn't. Lorentz didn't propose the theory. He kind of proposed the mathematical structure. And then Einstein said, but what if that mathematical structure was real? And then he made it a physical theory. At least that's my understanding of the history. Is there an antiphoton? Photons are their own antiparticles. What is stretching space? Could dark matter energy be stretching space between particles? That's what dark energy is doing. Dark matter doesn't do that. Could the saturation of black holes complexity growth be experimentally or theoretically linked to the resolution of the firewall paradox or the behavior of wormholes ER equals EPR connection? So as far as I know, black hole complexity being modeled as black hole volume, which I think is what you're alluding to, has not really been proven, and we actually don't know a good way to model the complexity of a black hole. And keep in mind, the black hole complexity stuff relies on the holographic principle, and that's still super conjectural too. So there's no hope of experimentally anything at this point. I haven't heard of any relations between complexity and the resolution of the firewall paradox, but maybe you've read something I haven't. Is dark matter closely related to antimatter? No. Antimatter is pretty ordinary, actually. How do you know nothing made it? You don't. You want me to believe all this came from haphazard chance? This is more far-fetched than divine. Look, if you want to believe that, you can. I'm just telling you what the physics says. I'm way behind. Let me jump forward a little bit. Evelyn. Okay, good. Is dark energy strictly responsible for the expansion of the universe, or also something else like maybe forming the fields between atoms? No, dark energy, if it exists, is strictly responsible for essentially a repulsive gravity effect that causes the universe to expand. What should I know about physics? You should know that physics is not magic, and if somebody's trying to sell you something with physics, they probably don't know physics. Sell you something with quantum physics, I should say. Can you explain what plasmoids are? No, I don't know what they are. I don't even know if I've heard that word before. Repulsive gravity effect? Yeah. Why do water bucket clutches work? I don't know what that question means. Hi, what I want to ask is that what astrophysics principle used in daily life, especially consumer goods tech, if there are any? Astrophysics? I mean, there's a lot of offshooting technologies, but like the actual principles, there really aren't any for astrophysics. Astrophysics is, you know, the physics of the stars, and for everyday life, like consumer goods and tech, like that's very Earth-based. Has string theory been a huge waste of time? No, we've learned a lot. If gravity is real, then why do things fall when I drop them? That is because of gravity. Difference between dark energy and dark matter. Dark energy, oh yeah. Is it mathematically possible to time travel? To the future, absolutely. To the past, it is mathematically possible, but it's not physically possible as far as we can tell. Does it bother you that the Star Trek universe doesn't account for an expanding universe? It's not relevant in Star Trek. Star Trek only ever stays within the galaxy with very, very few exceptions. And the galaxy isn't expanding. Do you have a doctorate? I do. Once you're taking Hawking radiation, could this be an explanation for the origins of the universe? No, Hawking radiation can't really explain the origins of the universe. What it does explain, though, is it explains how energy can be, how information can be conserved when even if stuff falls into a black hole, eventually that information leaks back out. And it explains why black holes don't last forever. Sorry, there's a lot of questions. Is there any theory that suggests the known universe sits in a massive black hole, explaining CRV? I don't know what that means, but I mean, this is like a popular pop sci idea, but like there's not really any evidence that this is the case. And in fact, I think that one can prove that within general relativity, our universe couldn't be within a black hole. But that's a thing that I'm working on. From Gyoskli, or Gyoksoli, with the 665 Hungarian, what is it? Forints. Thank you Praise the flying spaghetti monster. And from Celeb Caplet with the $1, thanks, I appreciate you. As with C-Bar, congrats on your recent viral video. Unfortunately, that viral video will not be as lucrative as it could have been, but that's okay. It's not a big deal. We can't choose when things go viral. It's Florence, not Florence. Do black holes ceasing to exist have any impact on dark energy? Not as far as we know. They don't seem connected, no. Can you explain why your cat is angry? Yeah, so my wife is, my cat woke my wife and I up at like 4:15 in the morning. And so my wife is currently sleeping with the door closed because I'm doing a live stream and she doesn't want to be woken up. And my cat really doesn't like closed doors. That's actually why the cat woke us up in the first place. So. How accurate is time acceleration in Interstellar? It's fairly accurate. They did their math, but it's not plausible that a planet would be that close to a black hole. Have you ever been contacted by the CIA, FBI, NSA, or any other intelligence agency? No. What's the viral video you're talking about? The one that I was just debunking a flat earther, as is the usual. It has like 1.5 million views right now. Is Neil deGrasse Tyson legit a good physicist, or is he just smoke and mirrors just for the fame? So he did do good work. He did good work. He got a PhD from a really excellent school. I think he went to Yale, I think. He was an excellent scientist. Since like the early to mid 2000s, or since like the mid to late 2000s, he hasn't really been working on research in as far as he's been working on communicating and popularizing science and physics and astrophysics, which, you know, is like something that's valuable and worth doing. So I would say that he is, you might call him a retired scientist turned science communicator. He still calls himself an astrophysicist, which, you know, depending on how you define these things, like if you have a PhD in astrophysics, then you're an astrophysicist, then sure. But yeah, I mean, he mostly just does science communication now, and he does a really good job at it. But his research in the past was quite good. It was like, it wasn't nothing. From G1 Expert with the 14 ZAR. I don't actually know what 14 ZAR is. It's South African rands. Okay. There are a lot of questions because you're a genius. Well, I appreciate that thought, that sentiment. It's quite nice. And from Shmuel Moskowitz with the $2, doesn't time travel lead to contradictions? Only time travel to the past. And that's why time travel to the past is almost certainly physically impossible. How valuable is popularizing science when a very small fraction of people can actually interact with it, understand it as a field? I think it's valuable to get... So what Neil deGrasse Tyson does that's valuable, I think is two things. On the one hand, it gets kids interested in science, which means that they're more likely to go to school for science. And I think having more scientists is a good thing. Even if they don't end up as researchers, getting a degree in science means that you have, and not just engineering, by the way, like actually science, means that you have passed the threshold of being able to think critically. I think that that's important. It leads to a more educated populace, and I think that a more educated populace makes better decisions. The second thing it does is it gets adults more interested in science, which leads to an increased respect for the sciences. And that means that these adults are more likely to vote for things that would help scientific research, that would increase funding for various scientific endeavors, which I think is a good thing. So I think it is valuable. From Bacon and Bush with the $10. Thank you so much, Bacon. Does an electron have a size? Also, may everyone have the 2026 they deserve. Agreed. An electron, in some sense, doesn't have a size, no. It is a point particle, in so much as you can just keep localizing it more and more and more. You'll never find a hard shell for the electron. However, all fundamental particles have a practical size, insofar as if you try to localize them to a sufficiently small size, they just become a black hole. They'll get trapped in a black hole. So no fundamentally, yes, perhaps instrumentally. And from Binary Ghost with the $10, as a physicist, what are some common movie media things that make your eyes roll? As a computer engineer, it's almost any hacking scene. Hackers is still a fun movie though. Oh, let me show you. Let me do a demo of the thing that makes my eyes roll. So you have person one. How are we ever going to get to the other planet? It's so far away. Scientist says, we'll use a wormhole. Person 1 says, what's a wormhole? Scientist says, well, imagine that space is like this sheet of paper. With a wormhole, we do this. That's the thing that makes my eyes roll every time. It's so cringy. It's so overdone. Anyway, from Tim Davidson with a $10. Thank you, Tim. If you went in the past to make a change, then from our perspective, that change has already been made. I call it the theory of temporal inertia. Anything that has happened has a tendency to have happened. Tim, this isn't an original thought, unfortunately. There's something called the Novikov consistency conditions, which a Russian physicist named Novikov came up with, kind of put in place 50 years ago, I think, maybe 40 years ago. And it's basically that idea. Sorry. Do you think that CERN created an alternate dimension? No, absolutely not. If they could fold a fitted sheet though, a wormhole might open. True. From Tim for Pele with the $5. Happy revolution around the sun, Dr. Blitz. Can you give an overview of renormalization? Yes. Happy revolution around the sun to you as well, Tim for Pele. So overview of renormalization. The idea is roughly this. There is a method, like a technique or an algorithm, that we use to convert classical theories of physics into quantum theories of physics. It's basically there's something called quantization that you do. You take the various fields and then you promote them to operators and then you find their conjugate momenta, all these things. The thing is if you just do that and then you run some calculations for various probabilities or for various decay rates or whatever, in the new quantum theory of physics that you got from promoting a classical theory, you get infinities everywhere. Nothing makes sense. Everything is just wrong. And the reason why you get infinities is because you imported classical notions as bare quantum notions. But in quantum mechanics and quantum field theory in particular, we don't have access to things like the bare mass of an electron. We don't have access to things like the bare charge of an electron. What I mean by bare is, what those values are in the absence of everything else. When we measure something, we're not measuring the bare mass of an electron. When we measure the mass of an electron, we're measuring the mass of the electron after it's been affected by all of the other quantum fields. And so what renormalization is for is it basically allows us to address all of those infinities by adding extra terms or by performing other modifications that allow us to then make a measurement of the mass, plug that mass in, and then cancel off the infinities in a way that lets our empirical results measure or match our theoretical results. That's the rough idea. And from Eric Olson with the $5, the Andromeda paradox. How can photons from Andromeda show two different events to people just because one happens to be running by the other? It's not what the Andromeda paradox says. The Andromeda paradox says nothing about what you'll see from photons. What it says is what the now is. So you can imagine that from my perspective, there is a now. You can imagine that if you have an axis where time runs up and space runs horizontally, my now would be a horizontal line at a constant time for everybody, even if they're very, very far away. But if somebody is moving relative to me, their now is slightly tilted, right? It's not straight across, it's slightly tilted. And so the further you get away from where I am, if we're at the same place, then their now and my now are the same at that place. But our nows will disagree significantly very far away. And so even if they're just moving a few meters relative to me, their now, as measured in Andromeda, will be a few days different. But the light from Andromeda, that's not affected at all. From Tim Davidson, again with the $5, maybe I go back and change my name and it's really my idea. Ah, that's a good idea. Yeah, it can be the Tim Davidson consistency conditions. Do you think there are more natural chemicals in the universe that we have yet to discover? No, I suspect not. The thing is we just know that they're going to be unstable. With very, very few exceptions. There might be something called the island of stability, which basically says that there could be atoms that are more stable than lighter atoms. So typically heavier atoms are more unstable. But there could be heavy atoms that are more stable than lighter atoms for a very specific reason involving nuclear physics. Basically, the nuclei, or the nucleons, which are protons and neutrons, occupy magic numbers in the nuclear shell. That's the idea, and so there might be a few atoms around the 120 to 130 mark of protons that would give us new elements that we haven't seen on Earth, but I suspect not. From Fat Cheesy Pants with the $5, I've always wanted to pursue a career in physics, quantum. Currently 31. How long do you think a PhD on average takes? Love the content, keep it up. So from a bachelor's degree, it takes about 5 to 7 years to get a PhD. That's the reality. But I appreciate the kind words. And then from Stit CVR with the $5, can you explain the Wheeler-DeWitt equation in quantum gravity? So the Wheeler-DeWitt equation is basically what happens if you take regular general relativity, you do a canonical quantization. Well, I should explain this. You basically do a canonical decomposition into space and time, and then you write down, you do the standard thing where you just promote all of the fields to operators. And now you have a set of equations. You have a Hamiltonian equation. You have some momentum constraints, and you end up with an equation that looks like quantum gravity. In some sense, it's like the most naive kind of quantum gravity that you can do. And it's not complete. It's not like what quantum gravity really is. It's just like probably what an approximation of quantum gravity should look like. Quantum gravity is supposed to be whatever theory of gravity is that's true on the quantum scale that zooms out to give us general relativity. That's what quantum gravity is supposed to be. But we don't have that yet. You have to donate to get an answer? No, it's just they get priority, right? Given the success of AI in the ICPC, would future cutting-edge science be mostly done by AI? I don't know what ICPC is. Let me Google it. International Collegiate Programming Contest? No, I don't think that success in a contest, especially programming, is going to imply success in research science. Thoughts on non-QFT quantum gravity approaches like causal set theory? I think that they should all be examined. So I don't have it, like, I don't think it's a waste of time. Do atoms stay together because of gravity or electric charge or both? So atoms are bound together by the electrostatic or by the electromagnetic force. That's how atoms form molecules. Could you explain 0-point energy? 0-point energy is just the energy associated. It's just the minimal amount of energy that a quantum system can have. That's all it is. And it turns out it's not zero because there's always some amount of motion. That's one way to think about it. And the reason there's always some amount of motion is because if there wasn't, then you would be violating the Heisenberg uncertainty principle. It's interesting how early universe models let geometry evolve but never question whether the number of spatial degrees of freedom could evolve too. Oh, people look into that, definitely. Is the weirdness in quantum mechanics telling us nature is non-classical, or that we keep smuggling classical questions into a theory that doesn't support them? Those seem like the same thing, not a dichotomy. I mean, nature is non-classical. That's what was proven by the that's what Elena Aspect, Zeilinger, and Klosser won the Nobel Prize for in 2022, showing that the universe is non-classical. Sorry, I gotta hydrate a little bit. Does dark matter curve space? Yes. What century do you think would globally accessible fusion batteries be plausible? I don't know if that'll ever be plausible. Who is responsible for the expansion of the universe? Well, it's not a who, it's a what. We call it dark energy. And to what does it expand? There's, at least in the standard cosmological model, there isn't anything outside the universe. It's just the universe, the internals of the universe getting bigger. Is the physics in Stranger Things correct? I haven't seen the new season, but no, almost certainly not. Is there a mini black hole inside every atom? No, we don't have any reason to think so anyway. What would be the consequences of a second dimension of time? Well, you would no longer have causality. You would no longer have the cause preceding the effect, for example. You would no longer have predictability for the reason that the cause would no longer have to precede the effect. So it'd be probably complex, or probably life couldn't exist. That'd be my thinking. I want to become an astrophysicist. I'm in 10th grade. Any tips? Go to college. Get a degree in astrophysics. How do two surfaces know not to combine when they touch? Well, they don't. And if you have two perfectly smooth surfaces that are perfectly clean and you touch them in space, they will combine. This is called cold fusion, or cold fusing, or cold welding, I'm sorry. However, almost all the time, any two surfaces are A, not perfectly smooth, and B, if they're metal, they're covered in an oxide. And so they're not like, they don't want to bond together. From Helium Biscuits with the $5, is dark energy being created versus first law? And please bring up Bad Illogical if you ever see him. He says he has mathematical proof of God. Praise Doc. Okay, I'll bring him back. Oh, you mean Bad Illogical? Yeah, I've brought him up before. I've talked with him. He's very silly. It depends on what dark energy is, but yes, in some sense, dark energy is being created. And the first law of thermodynamics, just as like the first law of thermodynamics, that energy cannot be created nor destroyed, that energy is conserved. It just doesn't, it's just not true in an expanding universe. It's just not, like, it's strictly false. So yeah, there just is more energy now than there was yesterday in the universe. It's a true statement. How often do photons of light not hit anything at all traveling through space? How often? I don't know. It's in an expanding universe, it's probably the case that most photons will never hit anything. In a static universe, a static infinitely large universe, it's probably guaranteed that every photon will inevitably hit something eventually. What do you think of quantum immortality? I don't think it's like, it's not real, because like what immortality means is that like all of your futures are infinite, but quantum immortality just means that one future out of infinitely many lasts forever. But that's not you necessarily. CMB photons never hit anything until us. Well, yeah, so they did hit something, right? Howdy, partner. What's your perspective on simulation theory? I don't think that we have any reason to think it's true. If what inside the universe is getting smaller or compact rather than space expanding, nope, you can show that that's not the case. If that were the case, then there'd be observational signatures, but there aren't. Just become a Christian? I'm good. What benefits would time travel give if invented? I don't think it would give any benefits per se. Did you build a PC? I have before. I didn't build the one that I currently have because I didn't have the time, and parts are expensive these days. Why are physicists such dorks? I mean, do you really have to ask that question to the answer? Which came first, black holes or stars? Current models suggest that stars are more likely to have come first. Is the increase in entropy the reason why the universe is expected to die the heat death? Well, that's what was thought for a long time. New data is coming out that is perhaps changing that. So we don't actually know if that's the expected outcome anymore. But it's not just increasing entropy. It's just that, well, I mean, that's one way to think about it anyway. Do you live in Moscow? No, never been. Do you know any programming? Yeah, I'm fluent in Python, like everybody else is. Can you talk about Oppenheimer's contributions outside of the Manhattan Project? I made a video about him fairly recently. He's responsible for basically demonstrating that black holes are real astrophysical objects, or at least demonstrating that, you know, in non-ideal situations, it's possible for a black hole to form. He's also responsible for doing some stuff on, what is it, the Bohr-Oppenheimer approximation, which is quite frequently used in quantum chemistry. Are you paid to keep the Earth round? Yeah, I personally, like, I go out every day and I like smooth out all of the bumps to keep it round. If I have a stick as long as 1 light year and it's weightless, if I push it, is it moving faster than light? Well, it can't be weightless. And even if it were weightless, the disturbance when you push on it will travel through the stick at the speed of sound. Is there an end to the universe? Almost certainly not. What was the first found black hole? The first found black hole was Cygnus X1, and I think it was discovered, like something there was what eventually became Cygnus X1, I think was discovered in the 60s. But it wasn't confirmed that it was a black hole until the 80s, maybe the late 70s. And that's when basically everybody agreed that it was a black hole. What's quantum chemistry? It uses quantum mechanics to, examine the microphysics of chemical reactions, right? How do you know if the source you're studying is credible? Well, peer review is usually a pretty good filter. If something has been peer reviewed, it has a better chance of being correct or a better chance of being credible than not. The downside is that there are a lot of ways that you can just pay to get your article published in what appears to be a peer review journal. And so you have to be a little bit more in the know. And so you have to kind of like dig, if something seems a little bit suspect, you should really dig into like the origin, like what journal is it published in? Is that journal highly regarded? Things like that. And then like, of course, encyclopedias are generally credible. Is 3I Atlas really a cosmic blanket put in orbit by Zaphod Beeblebrox? Yes. True. Confirmed. You heard it here first, folks. Who's your favorite physicist? I mean, it has to be Albert Einstein. He was the GOAT. The greatest of all time. How many ways can objects or energies from outside the solar system create an extinction event on Earth? I mean, a black hole could hit the Earth, could just come zooming by at 99% the speed of light and hit the Earth. That would destroy the Earth. A gamma ray burst could be directed at the Earth, and that would just it wouldn't destroy the Earth per se, but it would definitely sterilize it. There could be a nearby supernova. That wouldn't be good. Those are like the main ways. I guess you could have vacuum, or you could have a vacuum decay. That'd be pretty bad. There's no end in the universe. Doesn't that mean we will see a repeat in particle alignment? Only if the universe is infinite. It doesn't have to be. How much energy in joules is required to successfully explain to graphics that evolution is true? Oh, like a 1.21 gigajoules. There's a reference to Back to the Future, by the way, 1.21 gigawatts. I don't know why they pronounced it that way, but they did. Is it possible that we live in a steady state universe and our understanding of Big Bang cosmology is incorrect? I mean, it's like logically possible. Is it correct? Probably not. Bro, go enjoy, it's 2026. Not everybody lives in the part of the world where it's 2026. It is still 2025, definitely. Which would you prefer, Newtonian, Hamiltonian, or Lagrangian mechanics? I prefer Lagrangian mechanics. How far out into the universe have we seen with current instruments? We can see things that are, I think that the current record is like 35 billion light years away. At least that's how far away the thing is now that we saw. It wasn't that far away when it emitted the light that we're seeing. It was, 13.5 billion light years away. No, actually, that's not right. It would have been like, so if we're at z is 14 and it's 35, so it would have been like 2.5 billion light years away when it emitted the light that we're seeing. But then the universe expanded in the meantime, and so it's taken 13.8 billion years to get to us, or 13.6 billion years to get to us, or whatever. One of my mathematician friends was on a steady state universe kick for a while. It piqued my interest. Yeah, it's an interesting idea. How do you convince young Earth creationists and flurfers or conspiracy theorists that a vanishingly small probability doesn't mean there is a chance? Well, it does mean there is a chance. It just means that you shouldn't bet your life savings on it. Kitty. Blitz, would entropy be a good proof to explain the universe and its existence? I don't know how entropy would prove the universe and its existence. Are we able to Are we able to detect quasars directly aimed at the Earth, or would it just look like a really bright star until it hit us? So the thing about quasars are not gamma ray bursts, right? If a quasar was directed at us, it would just look like a really bright radio source. We'd be fine. A gamma ray burst is something that is much more abrupt, and we wouldn't see it coming at all. It wouldn't even look like a bright star until it exploded and then it traveled to get to us. From Binary Ghosts with the $10. Thank you so much, Binary Ghosts. Let's say I have the means to break up the moon in a dozen pieces of similar mass to each other and still keep them in steady orbit, all equally distant from each other. What happens on Earth? Tides disappear. I guess. Yeah, it depends on what the inclination is. You still might see tides, like kind of a polar tide, where you would see that the gravitation pulls water towards the axis. Well, no, I guess it wouldn't be a tide. It would just be like a change in where sea level is. But it wouldn't change a whole lot besides that, I don't think. By the way, this is a great time for me to shill. If you guys want to join the Discord server and you're 18+, you can go to discord.gg/drblitz, Dr. Blitz. There's also links in the description on YouTube. There's links in the link tree in my bio. And if you're interested in watching more debate-focused stuff, you make sure that you go and you follow the YouTube channel, Dr. Blitz Debunks. That's where all of the horizontal all of the horizontal live streams happen. And it's also where I post clips from individual debates. So check that out. Finally, if you want access to my debate notes, if you want access to the stickers, either on TikTok or on YouTube, consider becoming a member. It's like $4 or $5 a month. Helps support me. And you get access to my debate notes, which are useful if you're ever debating a flat earther or a theist or a young earth creationist or, you know, a climate change denier or whatever. And you get cool stickers. So consider doing that. You don't have to, of course. These are just my personal debate notes that I've made publicly available. Not publicly available, but I've made them accessible and as an incentive for people to support me. So consider it. All right, let's continue answering questions. Did the Stranger Things depiction of wormholes rage bait you? I haven't seen Stranger Things season 5, so no spoilers. What are your thoughts on the UAP sightings? And, you know, look, my view is show us the body. Until then, I'm not really that convinced. C is the maximum speed in the universe. Light emitted from a car moving at 60 meters per second will be c plus 60 meters per second. No, that's not true. Light emitted from a car will always be moving at the speed of light. Velocities don't add like you want them to once you're at relativistic speeds. What are your thoughts on quantum gravity candidates besides string theory like LQG and causal set? They're worth investigating. I don't know if they're right. I don't have a particularly strong opinion about whether they're correct, but they're at least worth investigating. New here, what are your thoughts on alchemy from a physicist perspective? Alchemy is real, it just costs billions of dollars and an enormous particle accelerator, and it's not very efficient. But you can absolutely turn lead into gold. It's been done. You can do it one atom at a time by smashing particles into it. How come there's been no real significant physics breakthrough since the 70s? Oh, there has been, you just haven't been paying attention. I mean, unfortunately, that's just the reality. What's the difference between a physicist and a mathematical physicist? A mathematical physicist is like a kind of physicist. We tend to be more mathematical, more rigorous. We tend to like to prove things rather than just like flying by the seat of our pants, if you will. Science advances one funeral at a time. This is a quote from Max Planck. Dr. Blitz, how can we solve the problem of old scientists? Well, you wait. Yeah, by the way, in the Discord server, I send out announcements for all of the videos that I post, all of the TikTok shorts that I post. Whenever I'm live, you'll get an announcement there. So it's a good way to like keep up to date, and you can ask questions and talk with other like-minded people. Do you play video games? Yeah, occasionally. I just don't have a lot of time lately. I like to play Overwatch and I like to play Battlefield 6. Those are the games I've been playing lately. Hey man, how many is there really states of matter? It's an interesting question. There's not really like an objective answer for it. So if all you're doing is changing the temperature if you keep the if you're at atmospheric pressure, for example, and you just change the temperature around, you'll get like 4. You'll get solid, liquid, gas, and plasma. But there's a whole bunch of other things that you can fiddle around too that will also produce phase changes. And there's different kinds of solids as well for a given molecule. For example, there's like 17 kinds of ice, and these are different phases of water, of H2O. There's also magnetic phases. So being a magnet versus being non-magnetic, that is a phase change. Like, that's a genuine phase change. It's just not a temperature-based phase change. Well, I mean, there's temperature involved, but it's not solely produced by changing the temperature. You also have to induce magnetism in one way or another, but that's a phase change. So there's a lot of different phases besides the 4 standard ones. From Velvet, with the 2 Canuck bucks, is death something to fear in your opinion? I mean, it's probably reasonable to fear it. I don't fear it, but I'm young, so I don't think about it that much. I imagine as I get older, I will fear it more. And from Aaron, thank you, Aaron. Long time no see. Well, I don't want to say long time no see, but I hope you're well. I hope your holidays have been good. What are your thoughts on the idea that perhaps spacetime is actually not basic? Since Einstein wasn't it once thought that spacetime was fundamental, but there are now reasons to deny this? Yeah, so there's this idea that spacetime is emergent, that it emerges from something deeper, from something more fundamental, and this is something that people take seriously. Some people think it comes from some sort of quantum Riemannian geometry or quantum Lorentzian geometry. Some people think that it emerges from like causal sets. Some people think it emerges from, knots of quantum operators. Some people think it emerges from information in some like kind of abstract way. So it's just not clear. A lot of people investigate this. Foolishly Ludicrous, thank you for the $5. From the EU Manifolds guy from Discord, have you heard Lobachevsky by Lehrer? I haven't, but I'm going to go open it up right now because I love Tom Lehrer. And rest in peace, Tom Lehrer, by the way. He died fairly recently, I think. Didn't he die from COVID or during COVID anyway? Lobachevsky. I'll listen to it later. Thanks for the recommendation. When Chernobyl happened, what did the atoms do? Would they dance? I don't think dance is the right word. The multiverse caller that destroyed you, lol. Remember when he destroyed your fragile eggshell mind? Is this a reference to something? From Tim for Pele, with the $10, with respect to many worlds interpretation, are you an Everettian realist or an instrumentalist anti-realist? Would an Everettian realism promote Hilbert's base from pure mathematical tools to ones that have real physical counterparts? Yep, I'm an Everettian realist. At least I lean that way. And from Velvet with the 10 Canuck bucks, what's your take on calling people stupid and making them feel bad for not understanding something? Do you think it's funny when someone is ignorant, or does it depend? I think it depends. I think it's totally valid to do when someone is ignorant. It's valid to call someone stupid or to make fun of someone when they're ignorant, and also loudly, confidently wrong. And, if they're aggressive or malicious or whatever, totally fine to make them feel bad because they deserve it. However, if someone just doesn't know something, I think that, and if you've watched my debates, which I'm sure you have, if it's clear that someone's not being like belligerent, but just doesn't know things, like people will in the comments will be like, oh, teacher mode just activated. And that's just because like at that point it's a teaching opportunity, right? Like you get to teach someone something, and then they're likely to like, if you do a good job, then they'll understand and they'll come over to your side or whatever. So yeah, it really very much depends on like you match energy, right? And from Keegan Pub with the $10, thank you so much, Keegan. Who are your 3 favorite power metal bands, and what's the best power metal show you've been to? It varies. There's like probably 6 or 7 that I listen to regularly. But right now, I'm on a Beast in Black kick. Beast in Black is really good. I really like Glory Hammer. It's tough. I really like Powerwolf. I really like Hammerfall. It's really tough. But that's I don't know if I can do a top 3. The best show I've been to a lot. I saw Powerwolf and Dragon Force and Windrose live in Poland. that was a great show. That was really, really good. But I also saw Hammerfall in like the tiniest, dinkiest little venue like 10 years ago. And that was really, really sad. That was cool too, because, you know, I could, you know, it was standing room only. I was at the very, very front. It was just like a fun show. So yeah, probably those. What are your thoughts on non-Euclidean space, and does it have any real merit in physics, or is it just nonsense? Non-Euclidean space is everywhere in physics, or at least in relativity. What do you think of spooky action at a distance is faster than light information transmission? It's not information transmission. That's the reality of it. Is Tyr kind of power metal? Folk power metal? Yeah, Tyr is like more folky. I used to listen to a lot of folk metal too. Tyr and Sephirum, and I still have all of it too, I think. I just, let me pull up my list, my music list. I have, oh, do I not even, I don't even, actually, I think I got rid of it a while ago. I think I just deleted it off my hard drive because I just wasn't listening to it anymore. But there is some more folky stuff that I listen to. I mean, like, Ailstorm is kind of folky, at least old Ailstorm was. Do you have a PhD in physics? I do. I haven't listened to Encepharum and Sephirum. I never knew how to pronounce it. I haven't listened to it since college. Is Attili's Quantum Mechanics book a good book for beginners? If that's the book I think it is, then yes. Can you actually phase your hand like in The Flash, or is it just fiction? It's fiction. Folk metal isn't really a thing, is it? Surely it can't be. Oh, it is. When did you decide to grow out your hair? I was like 11. Corpiclani, that was another one that I listened to. Yep. Encepharum, is that how you pronounce it? Okay, cool. Good. Death Polka. Yeah. Just. Is there such a thing as empty space or space-time? Is the volume at the center of any black hole always at a maximum density? Do all possible fields permeate every point of space-time? So it depends on what you mean by empty space or space-time. In some sense, you can have a space-time that's devoid of particles, but there will still be fields. Those fields are never, you can't like delete them, because by definition, answering your last question, every field is always everywhere in space-time. That's what it means for it to be a field. Now, it could be at its ground state, which means that it has, you know, in some sense, it's empty, but it's still there. The field is still there. Addressing your middle question, is the volume at the center of a black hole always at a maximum density? We don't know. We just don't know at this point. From 404 user not found with the 5 Canuck bucks. Thank you so much, 404. I know that your field of study isn't quantum physics, but do quarks interact with spacetime? Like, do they have gravity? Absolutely, they do. At least in principle, anything with mass is going to interact, or anything with really energy is going to interact with spacetime. It's going to cause a warping of spacetime. Absolutely. And quarks have mass and energy. What's the most exciting thing happening in your field today? Probably the big project would be the Vera Rubin telescope. It's going to give us really, really good data. And it'll hopefully illustrate more information, give us more information about dark energy. Would like to know the views of a physicist on philosophy, specifically on his outlook on life. How do you justify your existence or being? I don't need to justify my existence or being. I exist. It doesn't require justification to just exist. Why don't you use your mathematical knowledge to win the lottery? I do. It's called not playing. Blitz, I've yet to hear an adequate explanation for this problem. What is the airspeed velocity of an unladen swallow? African or European? Would you die upon entering a black hole? Eventually, yes. Is it possible for something to be created out of nothing? It depends on what you mean by nothing. Would like to, oh, I already answered that. How do you feel about quants and finance, and did you ever think about doing it? I never thought about doing it. Look, if somebody else wants to do it, by all means, I'm not going to stop them. I'm not going to judge them, but it's not for me. Do you actually sit down at times and work out problems using pencil and paper and the math that you learned, the math that you learned in university? I have entire notebooks filled with this stuff. Like 7 or 8 notebooks of just calculations for, you know, whatever project I'm working on. From Garba Gaiman with the 10 Canuck bucks. Thank you so much, Garba Gaiman. What types of realism do you hold to? Would you say that a concept is real, not the concept itself, but what it points to? I think that so I would say that like concepts are real insofar as they are like, you know, abstractions that are derived from an underlying physical substrate. In the same way that like Microsoft Word is real, in the sense that it's like an abstraction that comes from some physical phenomenon that's happening on your CPU and in your RAM. But I'm generally very averse to things like, oh, numbers are real. Like, that's kind of weird to me. Like, what does it mean for a number to be real? Ooh. Yeah. How do you power through the tedium to accomplish what interests you? Well, if it was tedious, I wouldn't do it. Have you ever taken a crack at the Yang-Mills? Well, I'm writing a paper on conformal Yang-Mills right now. We're probably going to submit it. Myself and 3 other collaborators are probably going to submit it in like a few days. Or we're going to upload it in a few days anyway. Bro, you're not a physicist. Nice try. What's this? This is a bad example. Those are Young diagrams for a calculation I was running. What's this? Like, it's physics, bro. I'm a physicalist now? No. Unless you, I mean, look, I'm happy to be called a physicalist if you can give me a good definition of what a physical thing is. If you can give me a good definition of a physicalist, I will tell you whether or not I am. I'm not like averse to being a physicalist. I used to call myself a physicalist, and then a friend of mine pushed me on what my definition of physical meant, or on what my definition of physical was, and I realized I didn't have a good explanation. And so I'm like, well, I can't call myself something if I don't have a definition of it. What's your current research? There are a few different things that I'm working on right now. I'm working on a project that's involving conformal Yang-Mills field equations. I'm working on a project that involves, let me pull up my project list. Working on a few kind of more purely mathematical projects. These are projects that involve conformally invariant renormalized integrals, a project that involves conformally embedded submanifolds. So do you think that you're the body, or do you think that you have a body? Well, in some sense, like I think that like I'm a brain, and my brain has a body. So what do you think of Wolfram's physics ideas? He is a high-tier crank, in my view. I'm not taking that seriously. Have you ever lectured? Yeah. When I was a grad student, I lectured for 3 years to roughly 100 to 100, or roughly 100 to 200 engineering students each term. So physicists do not celebrate New Year's? It's 10 a.m., bro. Like, what? Do you think our observable universe is inside a black hole? I don't. What's the biggest thing you hope to see in your lifetime? Biggest thing. The Great Barrier Reef is pretty big, and I'd like to see that in my lifetime. Why are people have brain sickness? That's like a psychiatry thing, not a me thing, not a physicist thing. Electric car or gas? I think electric cars are a good idea. If all objects have gravity and pull on each other, does gravity have an infinite range? Yes. Blitz, have you ever had your hair longer than it is now? If so, how long? I did get it cut fairly recently. I chopped off like 2 inches or so, but it seems to terminate at like a little bit longer than it currently is. It just doesn't grow that much more. From Herman Preet with the $5, Hammerfall. I've never heard someone else mention them. I listened to them on my iPod Touch while walking to the bus stop in elementary school. Yeah, they're still around. I've seen them live like 4 times, I think, maybe 5 times. Hammerfall's great. They are like, so there are some bands that I like their music. Maybe I like their music more than Hammerfall's, because Hammerfall's like kind of like, it's like basic power metal. It's a lot more like traditional power metal. There's like no keyboards and stuff like that. However, in my view, Hammerfall does some of the most pure rock and roll shows that I've been to. Like I've seen Sabaton, I've seen Powerwolf, I've seen Ghost, I've seen Gloryhammer, Ailstorm. I've seen a whole bunch of bands, but like the Hammerfall shows are always excellent. They're not like there's not a whole bunch of pyrotechnics, there's not a whole bunch of like props and gimmicks. It's just like a good show. And from Based Ashura with the $5. Thank you so much, Based Ashura. I like to say we have brain piloting a flesh mech suit, like Devo or Penny Parker. Yeah, exactly. I like to think that we're a brain wearing bone armor that's covered in meat. That's more accurate, but yeah, it's exactly like that. Why does gravity travel at the speed of light? Well, gravitational waves are massless. And so anything that's massless is going to travel at the speed of light. That's just a fact of what the speed of light is. Which university are you from? PhD stage? I'm not telling you where I got my PhD. Very easy to find if I told you where I got my PhD from. Is it true the expansion from dark energy is slowing down? There was a claim that there was a paper that was released like a month ago that made that claim. It was peer reviewed, but there's disagreement, so we'll have to wait till we get new data. Why did CERN do a demonic ritual as an opening ceremony? Well, CERN didn't. There was like a dance troupe that did it as like an art thing. And it's because Europe is weird and they do weird art things sometimes. Like, I think I'm thinking of the same thing. Or wait, isn't that a train? Wasn't that a train tunnel? Not wait, no, hold on. No, CERN didn't do that. That was a tunnel. That was the opening of a tunnel, not CERN. You're getting your conspiracy theories mixed up. Europe is weird, America is weird. Europe is weird as far as like art goes, especially like Central Europe, like around like Germany and Switzerland and, you know, Poland. Like it's like the art stuff there is very it's very weird from an American sensibilities perspective. An American sensibility, yeah. It's just, you know, like everybody's weird a little bit. Is becoming a physicist interesting because movies shows it's boring? Movies don't show it's boring. Movies like way oversell it, in my view. From Alexander Foy with the $5. Hey, Mr. Dr. Blitz, what is your take on the Newton-Mach bucket problem? Concept of removing inertia is crazy to me. Yeah, so in some sense, the lens-throwing effect kind of resolves this issue. The lens-throwing effect is a phenomenon that is present in general relativity, namely that whether or not you're rotating depends on whether or not the surrounding stars are rotating, basically. Poland mentioned, indeed. Will you publish the Book of Leviticus? Probably not. It needs to be, it's an oral tradition, if you will. Do you like apples? Yeah, sure. Europe is less reserved. There you go. Are you doing any debates today? Nope, not today. Monday, Thursday, Friday, Sunday is when I do debates. We don't say praise be the lamp. We instead say I love lamp, or we bask in the lamp's glow. A few more super chats from Jack Fetter with the $5. How long have we thought space is expanding faster than C beyond a certain point? Does that disappoint you that we'll never know what's beyond? So what is true is that if you go sufficiently far away, right now in cosmological time, the distance between us and that place is growing faster than the speed of light. And yeah, it is kind of disappointing, but maybe if the universe recollapses, future humans will see it anyway. From High Bear with the $5, your opinion, AI world model debate now is should AI learn physics from the bottom up, learn by itself, or should we give it our current understanding? I don't think that this is a particularly important debate, to be honest. I mean, but like, it'd be interesting to see what conclusions it would come to if it learned from the bottom up, but you can't learn physics without doing experiments, and that would mean giving AI access to like running experiments, which would be weird. From Drew Crew with the $5, how big is a black hole explosion at the end of its life? It's pretty big. We can calculate the amount of energy released. I'd have to run the calculation again, but we can calculate the amount of energy released in the last 1 second of a black hole's life. And it's pretty substantial. And from Dangjos with the $5, can you please explain the confusion in conversation with Sabine Hossenfelder and Tim Maudlin on particles not being excitations in quantum fields? Vid is on the... I haven't seen it, so I can't explain it. No. Sorry about that. From Pirate Fly with the £5, universe came from a hot dense state. Black hole comes from a hot dense state. Any correlation to one starting the other? Love your channel. So black holes don't necessarily come from a hot dense state. Black holes are just dense. That's it. They don't have to be hot. In fact, they are very cold. But no, as far as we can tell, there's not really any correlation. And from Doc Martin's lover, with the $10, thank you, Doc Martin. Do you have any tips for someone who may be struggling in college? Was it hard work that got you through college, or do you have any other advice? So being real with you, I did not have a hard time. I came in with a lot more mathematics than my fellow students. So like all of the physics classes, I didn't have a lot of physics background, but all of the physics classes, I wasn't struggling with any of the math. So I had a really easy time just following the physics and learning that stuff. However, I know that that's not the reality for a lot of people. My best advice is attend office hours as frequently as you can for anything that you're struggling with. Your professors will absolutely want to explain things to you if you come willing to learn. If they're good anyway. If they're not good, then I can't help you there. And that's probably the most valuable resource because they know exactly what they're trying to get you to understand, rather than if you go to YouTube or if you go to some website or whatever. Maybe they'll end up teaching you something that isn't exactly related to what you need. And from C-Bar with the $5, if gravity wave is massless, how can it carry energy? The same way photons carry energy. Photons are massless, but they carry energy. And from 404 user not found with the 5 Canuck bucks, how long do you think it will take for the unification of quantum mechanics and the general theory of relativity? And what theory do you think is best? I don't know why people ask me to predict the future. Like, no shade at you, 404, I appreciate you. But like, I can't predict the future. These things are, like, it is never possible to predict when a breakthrough will happen because otherwise it wouldn't be a breakthrough if it was predictable, right? There's just no way I can answer that. What's something taught in physics that you personally think is misleading? Taught in physics? Like in a physics class? I don't know. I can't think of anything, to be honest. From Mindforged Manacle, predict the future now, number man. Look, I'll do my best. Like, I'm thinking at like a college level. I can't think of anything that was actually genuinely misleading at the college level. Do you agree with Penrose on quantum theory? I don't. Oh look, it's the goofy clown who bans me from chat when he gets called out on his ridiculous worldview. You'll have to thank the mods for that. But if you're being obnoxious, yeah, you'll get banned. Sorry. Do you think the past and future exist or only the present moment? I think that it all exists, yeah. That's the way I lean. Maybe energy is not created or destroyed. Okay, yeah, that's actually probably a good one. Yeah, it is true. In an expanding universe, or in an evolving universe, it is just the case that energy is not conserved. But it's still a very, very good approximation on Earth. You've been to Poland. What is the thing that surprised you most about Poland? So I've been to Krakow twice. And the thing that surprised me most was Krakow has like a beautiful castle. Like an enormous and beautiful castle. The other thing that surprised me is just that Poland doesn't look, or not Poland, Warsaw does not look like an old European city. And it shouldn't have been surprising because it was obliterated in World War II. But like it just does not look old like a lot of the other European cities have been to. Which extreme property of a magnetar would unalive you the fastest? Oh, the magnetic field. I mean, that is like the definitionally extreme thing. It's the magnetic field. You'd be torn to shreds. Anyway, I do have to go. I have to go wake up my wife because she didn't sleep well last night. So I need to wake her up because she has a thing in an hour. But thank you guys so much for being here. Let me make sure that I didn't miss any super chats or any TikTok anythings, any like, cash apps. Okay, so I didn't miss any of those. So thank you guys so much for being here. Thank you guys for asking your great questions. And I will see you guys tomorrow for some more debates in 2026. So make sure to tune in. Make sure to join the Discord server at discord.gg/drblitz. And I'll see you guys same time, different topic tomorrow. Take care.